Well, it's 5 o'clock and a quorum is present, so I call the meeting to order and I'll ask for a motion to approve tonight's agenda as published. Loper, it's approved. Seconded. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. This is a time we reserve for public discussion. Is there a member of the public who wants to address the board? There seems not to be. I forgot to check how long the last month's meeting went.
Just under an hour.
Just under an hour?
Yeah.
Oh, man, you were trying. Well, it was a tough agenda.
I was.
Yeah. So our first item to be discussed is a pretty big and important and complex one, which is the budget discussion. A lot of good information in the packet. Anything you want to point us to for it? Or orient us?
I would say, as always, we present the budget numbers in a couple of different ways. So if there's one that resonates with you, it's going to be the same information as the rest of them, but we're always happy to answer questions. I know it can seem a little bit overwhelming, we were tasked this year with, again, thinking about maintaining service and growing and just being really thoughtful in what we ask for in budget increases, and we did that. We were very careful. We tried to be clear with requesting what we needed, but since we've had a few years of this budget landscape, we're at a point where if we don't see an increase in the materials line, we're really going to be put behind the ball on that, and we're seeing impacts of that on our service. We also asked for the $20,000 for a strategic planning consultant. I think both of those requests, the 27 for materials and the 20 for consulting, are on the conservative side. We expect that we would be adding some. We would request to add some board controlled funds for the no move request, most likely to both of those to meet the real need. Otherwise, the budget request felt pretty much like what we'd expect. We didn't deviate much except in those lines. Any other adjustments were simply to match either inflation or changing costs in general. And then I also shared that the CIP project has a budget adjustment down, but is still holding, as far as being in the running. And we'll get more information about that as meetings progress. So in the packet, you have the memo, that information, the CIP sheet, which you need for, but now has the updated budget. And then it goes into the munis entry, which is that full sort of line by line budget. And after that is the budget in brief, which same information, a little bit different layout. Happy to answer any questions that folks have. If you have a specific question, if you could share the page that you're looking at, that way everybody can get there, that would be helpful.
Are we ready to start?
Yes.
I want to talk about the consultant, $20,000. The last two we've done without a consultant.
Yes.
And I'm always skeptical of the consultants. When I was at the university, they hired a consultant to do the new logo and so on. I think they paid him like $40,000 or $50,000. And I know that the art department had a very gifted guy that could have been employed for less than that, maybe as a university employee. So I'm skeptical. It's a business thing. I know businesses believe in consultants, but and that is linked into nonprofits and so on. But what can a consultant do that we can't do ourselves? That's great for that $20,000.
That's a great question. I think that a consultant can do a little bit more sophisticated data collection from the community about some of the things that people would like to see. I would say technically we have the skills to do that, but our plates are sort of full doing operational library work. Your consultant come in would add value by having the steps to do that, helping us sort of shepherd the technology pieces of it. They also can be a neutral voice in stakeholder focus groups and things like that. It's sometimes easier, I think, to be candid with somebody you don't see at the desk every day about aspirations for the library. And I think that using a library-specific consultant or a consultant with a lot of library experience can also bring sort of a broader view of the field, and then they can glean from what they've done other places to help us make some decisions. I think that the plans we've done in-house have been very effective for the times that we've been in, but as we enter sort of another high-stress legislative session and we hope firmly out of COVID closures, this feels like a good time to bring in sort of an expert in the planning process. I'm comfortable talking about a 5-year rather than a 3-year if people see that as better stewardship of the resources, or looking at alternatives. I do know that we have expertise in planning on the board. There are a few opportunities in the community for lower cost consulting, but we would lose the library specific knowledge with what that direction.
And where does the pool of consultants come from? I mean, where do you find it?
I think different people would have different answers. I would say I've had really great experience with a number of more well-known library consultants. So I would probably start with sort of that group. We're part of a couple different library groups, including the Urban Library Council and other groups like that. So often there'll be sort of group conversation about, hey, this is our situation. We're looking for a consultant. Has anybody used somebody that was really great? So a lot of that network use, because everybody's more comfortable with virtual meetings now, I think our net could be a little bit wider than in the past. And probably the first place I would reach out to would be a consultant that has worked with us at the library before. We were working with somebody right before the COVID closure, and I would be tempted to go back and sort of see what her availability was, what her rates are at this point, things like that. And $40,000 will probably not cover what we would need, but it would.
Then say we're going to charge this much per hour, and we'll see what it will be. Right?
Yeah,
Be a fixed price for the.
The best I think it also tweaked for the tasks that we add on. So it's not an hourly, or it's defining what portion of the job you want to hire.
Yeah, you agree to a scope and a price. To me, having just left the business of doing this kind of consulting, well, in this setting, the compelling argument is the time. It's just, you're basically temporarily adding to your staff capacity to get a job done. You know, if you were a giant institution, you'd have a strategic planning office, and you wouldn't do this. But yeah, it's just hard to figure out where you're going to find the time among the current staff to do this episodic stuff. And I'll just go on record as saying 5 years strikes me as a very long time to try to plan for it. You'd be dissatisfied with the last few years of the plan by the time you got there in almost every scenario, I think.
So what would this consultant be doing mostly? Is it just data collection, or what would they do?
I mean, at this point, I think that we would meet with someone and talk about what we need out of a plan. So sort of go over what our past plans were and talk about what our hope for the next process is. And then I think we would just work out those details. I think it's time to do a community survey, which we did in-house the last couple times, and it was effective, but it wasn't as wide-reaching as we'd like. So I think a distinctive plan for what that process would look like right now. I think it would depend on, again, if we're looking at, if there's any budget relief that we see coming up in the future, or if there's significant legislative changes that would impact services. It was interesting, the last time we worked with a consultant, having the rising awareness of COVID and what that might look like during the planning process was so disruptive. And it was good timing in the end, because we were able to say, we're going to stop. We're not going to finish this as consultant, because we know that we're going to be having to make so many pivots that it doesn't make sense. So kind of understanding where we are with legislation and doing a little future casting will help us know what that will look like.
I was once told that if you want people to take you seriously, you need luggage. So consultants bring luggage. That helps.
Yeah, I think that we did also work with the state library with the last plan for just a few pieces of it in the beginning of the planning process, and then sort of veered off of that as we got further into the plan. But I think that there's also a commitment level that comes with a paid consultant, that you have you know that things are going to get done. You kind of have a timeline that keeps everybody at pace, and that's also helpful.
Does the state still offer, I mean, are there still services still as robust? They've been gutted, so to speak. Like, that state library is not, well, I mean, they just keep being whittled away.
I think the regional, the regional folks are still there in their jobs that can do this kind of work. Johnson County Public Library directors just worked with one of those reps to do our strategic planning. And yeah, I think that they're still there. I don't know if they're less robust than they think. I think there's.
Okay. Is it possible, like a combination of their services and what you can do, and this outside consultant could become, like putting them all together could be a way to really focus what you're spending your money on.
Yeah, and the libraries ask for board involvement and all that too. I mean, that we could reduce costs per consultant if trustees were interested, or facilitating stakeholder groups and things like that. It's kind of, again, depends on the landscape of who wants to get involved with it.
I've been through this process quite a few times. I think there's tremendous value in having an outside consultant. So I enter the Brooks request. I just think we need to find the right person, but it's a high value investment.
Well, it's a high value investment if you can get something out of it.
Yeah, and I believe we have in the system. These are
I've done
companies that
this.
specialize
for years.
These are like,
It's
these are,
hit and miss.
these are companies that specialize in doing library strategic plans. So they're not general consultants, they're specialized in the field. So I don't think we've been misled. I don't know which companies you're considering when you put out the software, but we had several bids that were good, and we were able to find something that went with the field well and brought in a lot of external expertise that I think was valuable.
Like outsource the networking piece will be here too. You know, other library connections, working with consultants for certain contract requirements would be a good resource there so that you're sure to get your money in water.
And we have a huge advantage here because we collect so much data already that we will already take to the table some of the work that will have to be done contractually in some environments, which is great because we also have then the legacy data that can inform what a certain like.
Other topics? Can you remind us of how the process proceeds, how to,
So we will have there'll be a couple more conversations about the CIP, which is done as part of the budget, but it's a little bit of its own track. And there'll be an opportunity for department heads to speak directly to city council about our department projects. The next big step, we have documentation steps all throughout this that usually don't rise to board level, but sometimes we include them. So we'll continue turning in the narratives and the pieces that go in the budget book. And then the next big step is having our departmental meeting with finance and the city manager's office. And I believe that's scheduled for very early November or something like that. So a small group of members of the leadership team will go to City Hall and meet with the city manager, finance, a couple other department representatives, and then it's sort of a line by line walkthrough of the budget request that we put in. So it's the munis request that you see here with like rotational fields that we would have entered details for anything that kind of deviates from the past. And it's an opportunity for both of us to ask questions, seek clarification, so do some priority setting. And then after that meeting, the city manager goes through all of the departmental requests and meetings and comes back with sort of the next draft of the budget. And relatively soon after that, they'll start to sort of finalize the budget and then take it to city council. So lots of steps. We're through most of the we've already done our budget editing, which is a really big milestone for each department. So at this point, we'll be looking forward to next about city manager's office meeting. Well, thank you. If nobody has questions about that, we can talk about the quarter one. Yeah, finance. Yeah. I think on page 27 of the packet is the memo for the expenditures for quarter one of the fiscal year. This felt like what we usually see at this point of the year. So as usual, I took anything that looked really high or really low for this time of year and put it in the memo with a description. At this point, I'm sure some of you are recognizing patterns where consultant services is always on this list because of when that money is spent during the year and things like that. But I think it's important to keep those front of mind so that the numbers don't feel scary as we move through the year. I don't know if there's anything on this over and under list that hasn't been on one in the past, but I'd be very happy to talk through any of them. We've got leadership team members in the room as well who can jump in as appropriate. And then with that, again, we have the more robust list after the memo where it kind of goes through the lines. So the reason that these lines look different than in the full munis report, these are condensed into like group lines from the individual. So we would take, if every department has an outside printing line, we put that all in the same row on this document.
Good questions or comments on the Q1 financials?
And it's hard to know how these things, or even what they, some of them were. This is on page 29. Software R&M services. I don't quite know what R&M are. Repair and maintenance?
Yes.
Okay, please. Again, I get buffaloed by the acronyms, and I suggested that we make a list of them and always include it so that people that are buffaloed by them have someplace to turn to.
Yeah, no, that's a good suggestion. And the software and hardware are lines that we're seeing changes in the last few years as things move from sort of hardware based to software cloud based. So that's a good example of one of things can feel oligarch.
But 80% of that was spent in the first quarter. Does that mean we're going to overspend this by to a couple 100%?
No, we don't expect to. Most of that line is spent on the iOS, so the backend catalog system, and that is an annual bill that goes out early in the fiscal year.
Okay.
So that doesn't mean we won't go over, but I don't think it will be
Not at this rate.
over.
Yeah. And what is PPU? That's up higher. Streaming media, PPU. I don't know what.
Pay per use.
That's on the same page. 47,750.
That's pay per use.
Paper per use. Okay.
Other questions and comments on Q1 financial? I think I've said it each quarter, but I really do appreciate the memo that explains the big changes. Very helpful. I did have here on the output statistics. First of all, the output report, the blue page 32. I love it. I love it just a tad more if the actual numbers accompanied the percentages. But I love the statistics at a glance and the comments too. I like that.
That makes sense. We can add that. We're really trying to make these as accessible as possible.
Yeah.
But adding that is a great idea, and other comments people have now or later would be helpful.
And as I went through the line by line, there's some striking numbers in there, big numbers. And I just want to maybe encourage board members to look for the one that impresses you the most and then talk about it or if you're a social media user, post it. I think telling people, for instance, that the card catalog access 400,000 times per quarter. There are people in our community that think the library is growing irrelevant. Well, 400,000 things got looked up in the catalog in 3 months. That to me is an impressive statistic. And there's a bunch of others I could have pulled out a bunch of others in that output statistics list. Yeah, so maybe you can find your favorite and tell your friends about it.
While you're looking for your favorite, if you see anything that you feel the opposite about, like, wait a minute, why did this go down 90%? Reach out, because we can talk through that. This order is a little bit different or the format at least is a little bit different. We're trying to make the output statistics line up with the state reporting that we do. So things are kind of shifting around. So again, if you've been in the pattern of looking at contractual city numbers on a certain page and don't see that, Jen and I could do a walkthrough with you.
Great.
It's the help desk questions answered that always blows me away.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's a few thousand.
I don't know how they find time to do anything else when they have, thousands of questions directed at them.
Yeah, and that one's a good one to think about too, because there is sort of a claim that references
Yeah.
is dead and all these things, and we do a lot of face-to-face and consult call reference work. It looks a little bit differently than it did in the past, but I think it's still a really critical service.
There you go. Yep. Yeah, so when your friends say Google has replaced the reference librarian, well, not for a few thousand times each quarter.
I noticed there's a modest decrease in the circulation of books. It's modest. What, it's 7 or 8%, something like that, maybe even not that high. Is there an explanation? Anybody work up an explanation for that, or is it so modest that it really doesn't require any kind of gloss?
And do you want to speak to that?
I can speak to a few things. So a couple of things that pointed out that like stood out to me was the young adult fiction. Young adult fiction is down 20%, which is really concerning.
Yeah.
But if you look at other urban library, like in the Urban Library Council, or in Publisher Weekly about bookstore sales, young adult fiction is not doing well in sales wise or across libraries. And they're trying to think, is that a result of COVID? It's or distractions on their phones. Another thing that's been very interesting with YA fiction is a lot of authors that were YA authors are writing adult books now.
Mhm.
They've moved over.
Mhm.
The romantasy and romance fiction, they're leaving the genre, or at least the age group. What was impressive to me was that children's had been going down quite a bit for a while, but it started either leveling off or, in the case of middle grade fiction or chapter books, increasing, which is not something that's happened at other urban libraries or in the publishing industry. Print, I mean, really in these numbers, audiobooks, digital audiobooks are carrying us.
So young adult fiction does not include graphic novel, right? Or does it? Are they separate?
There's,
Two called
yeah, they're separate. Yeah,
That's my big trend. I just need to see the picture throughout the word.
right.
So fiction was carried for a long time. Young adult fiction was carried by the new adult. And it seems like they've abandoned that title, that genre. All my students want graphic novels, and that's all they want. Nothing else.
Both of our comics numbers, both are graphic novels, and the adult and teen section and the children's is down this quarter, which is that's strange.
That is strange.
Figure out why that is.
It's not by much, but it is strange. Yeah. I see that.
It's been skyrocketing in use, and so we're seeing a leveling up.
Okay, then it is a new publishing right now.
Yeah, next quarter will be impacted by the publishing cycle of October, end of September, October, and November, and another big publishing months.
Sure.
And so the total print was down 3.3. If you look at the circulating altogether, which includes things like our discovery kits and things like that, it was under a 1% there, folks.
Ironically, you could probably ascribe it to COVID sort of passing, because during COVID, people were, they were made to stay home.
Yeah.
And so what do you do when you stay home, when you're tired of watching TV? You read a book.
Right.
I don't like comparing my annual reading to my 2020 reading.
Yeah. So you want
I
that?
keep it up.
I'm trying.
It's
I am the one who's boosting the audiobook. I never make it. I never stay up to date when I want and need to read.
Yeah, lots of people are moving over to audiobooks. We have long holds. We have like 40 holds on one audiobook. We'll have 5 copies downstairs on the shelf.
Yeah.
Not guilty. I recently put one on hold and it didn't give me a estimated time. It just says many months. I mean,
Many months are
yeah.
interesting. Well, anything else before we move on to the director's report?
I wanted to say that the reading discussion is really good. It's really excellent. It makes it quite clear how it's done, why it's done, and makes a good argument for it being done. So thanks for doing such a capable job.
Thank you.
And
Right. Elizabeth, did you want to add anything to the director's report and come up since you wrote it?
I'd like to thank Robin for presenting at ILA with me. With a good experience all around. I can update that the second sewer pipe issue has been resolved. There's no evidence at this point that those were related. I had a few moments of panic when we were going to have a total building failure. But they've assessed what was visible, doing the repairs, and Brad's working on a plan to do a little bit more visual inspection of the existing cast iron. But was fully back the day that the packet went out, and that's taken care of. Otherwise, no other updates.
No word yet on whether you'll be able to place a staff member on the SLIS advisory.
No, I made the suggestion, and hope that they keep it in mind for the future. I didn't realize there were terms on that committee. So when I had started on the committee under the previous leadership of SLIS, and then learned that it was a 2-year appointment. They've got a great crew on now, and I did share. After the board packet came out, I had a staff person reach out and say, "Hey, that sounds like a cool opportunity," and I agreed she'd be a great fit. So I may follow up with Lucy and just say, "I know I recommended this, but I have a name now if you're looking for." So I think it's full at the moment, but I'm not sure when the next terms will be coming up.
It's a great connection. See, that brings us to, we can start with children's services. Are any questions?
That's cool thing.
Yeah. Brings us to collection services. As you all think about that, thank you, Jen, for the clickable envelopes here. This is just, I'm just zipping around this document. It's fantastic. But IT, IT report.
I'm just kind of curious about like the moving to subscription services. You know, how do you plan for the growth of that? I'm like, what? I don't know. I don't have a great question, and I'm curious about it. Such a moving from a like finite cost to a potentially ongoing. Since we're talking about budget, like, what do you think? the ongoing subscription nature of
Yeah.
all your
So
services.
part of my budget is funding that continues to go up, and more and more things kind of require us to move to the model. We don't really have a lot of choice in that. Yeah,
And then the security piece is on them, right? It's less like they would be responsible for handling threats to the security. Is that the idea?
yeah, and usually, I mean, often, I mean, you never really know if their security is better than what you're doing, but generally, it's often true. And one thing they update things automatically. They don't have to wait for it to be released, and we download it, install everything. They're just automatic updates. Also, you know, they for the biggest companies, it's about security. So it becomes a big business that they invest a lot of money. I hope to see it.
Definitely.
Yeah. That's one of the driving forces for us about.
And also IT report. That takes us to the development department report.
Katie's not here today.
Katie's not here.
We can try to answer questions or take notes to take back to her if needed.
Yeah. Just note the arts and crafts bazaar. If anyone happen to know when the deadline for getting donations into that this year, if people are making things.
I don't know. I would assume it's
Pretty close to the
pretty close to the day.
It's on the website. It's a
Okay.
sticker and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I think that brings us to the president's report. And I just want to note that next month I'll be appointing a committee to do the director's evaluation. So if you're interested or willing to serve in that role, let me know. I appreciate it. And if not, I'll just start drafting people. Anybody who did it last year, but not the year before, I'll find out who you are and you're at high risk. So, one of you. One of you should probably serve. So.
Did DJ do it the last 2 years?
Because I worked on, yeah, I did do it the last 2 years. I think you're probably safe then.
Must be one.
Yeah, I mean, if you really want to, it's not painful. It's just, I guess I do want to comment. It's one of the very most important things we do as a board.
Yes.
It really deserves serious attention. There's, yeah, it's just a really high. It's a very important responsibility and one that I think we can be proud of doing well compared, I think, to a lot of peer boards. So, yeah. Are there any announcements from members? I'm not sure that we're going to have necessarily any committee reports, but I'll check anything from advocacy, finance, or from the foundation folks.
Not really. I would add though that I think it's a good idea for the trustee for the board financial committee or finance committee to meet with the foundation's finance committee
Oh,
periodically. There are a lot of issues, of course, that affect what we end up doing here, and it would just be, I think, a good way to collaborate.
Great idea.
Information.
it's a little large.
I'm on the foundation's finance committee too, or it all have to be filtered through me.
They're not the arbitrary choice. No, it sounds suspiciously like a volunteering. Okay, I'll note that communications were included in the packet. Were there any comments on those? That brings us to the consent agenda, which includes approval of the minutes and approval of the disbursements for September. Motion to approve the consent agenda. Seconded. And it's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Right. Are there any opposed? Okay, and for November, we've got, as I mentioned, the Director's Evaluation Committee appointment. Review the unattended children's policy, the general library personnel policies, and the authority for administration of personnel policies for library employees. Don't remember that one. Sounds like a dinger. And hear from adult services and community and access services. So I believe that brings us to the end of our agenda. So I'm adjourning the meeting. Thank you all very much.
At the next meeting, sorry, early.
Thanks, Hannah.
You might want to look at the Prairie Lights sale that we do here at the Meet for fundraising.
Yeah. Yeah, again.
I can buy there.
Yep. I'll be there.
You need to bring your money all the way until December 6th.
Oh, thanks. Okay. Great. I might get it finished yet.
Well, there is a special, one reason we don't resale too.
Right.
That,
Yeah.